Is your focus on getting the meeting and winning them over during that meeting? And when are you upfront about your intention to sell them something?
So that is such an important question, and it can be tricky, honestly. What I find is that I want to let them know that, of course, I'm in sales, and I let them know that based on my profile. So when I've sent them the message to connect, and when they've accepted, they've probably looked at my profile, they've definitely looked at my headline. And so that automatically makes it pretty clear what I do and what I'm involved in. And they are accepting the meeting based on knowing that already. So I don't have to be deceptive to them or something like that when I'm having these meetings. I am genuinely curious about people, and that genuine curiosity really pays off for having conversations that are not overtly salesy. But at the same time, I try to go into these meetings with a plan. And in Prospecting Mastery, I actually provide a template of a call planner that I use to plan every conversation. And I write notes. I keep notes in OneNote, and I write notes ahead of time about what questions I want to ask them that are related to the dialogue that we've already had on LinkedIn with my connection request and my DM, so that when we start that conversation, I know where I want to take it. And then I'll ask them to introduce themselves, and I'll introduce myself briefly, explain that I, train people on how to use LinkedIn more effectively. So that's my introduction. It's very small and short, but it's about a value proposition, right? And then I'll ask them to introduce themselves. And a sales trainer taught me this really useful way to get that dialogue going by introducing myself as a sales trainer in LinkedIn, then asking them to introduce themselves is like, well, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and some of the challenges that you're facing? And they get into talking about themselves more from that perspective right away. It feels natural to them. Even though on my side, it might feel a little bit scripted, they don't feel that way. And so then they start talking, and I have questions that I'm planning to ask them, just 3. I don't want to do a lot of talking, but I want to get them going on it. And so that generally helps to gently guide a conversation in the direction that I want to take it. But then also, I find that when I'm asking them questions and I'm really engaging them in conversation and interested in what they have to say, they'll talk for, maybe 20 minutes of the 30-minute meeting. And then all of a sudden they'll just kind of stop themselves and they're like, oh, wow, this has been great, Phil, but, tell me more about yourself and what would you like to get out of this meeting, or how can I help you? And that becomes a really natural transition for you to then start talking about what it is that you do and ask them questions about whether they might have that need. People are just kind of naturally polite, and I rely on that. It doesn't happen 100% of the time, but I'd say like 90% it does. So I rely heavily on that transition.